Hiya. In this video we're going to take a look at some of the inspection points when we're looking at our connectors, so Karabiners and Maillons. If you've not watched the overall principles of checking your gear video I've done, I suggest you go and do that now before watching this, because this will probably make a lot more sense, because I'm not going to repeat most of the stuff I said in there. So yeah, go and check that out. But just as a recap, when we're looking at any item of equipment, be it carabiner, sling, rope, there's just a few basic principles to follow. So we need to look, feel and check all the different methods of operating for that device to make sure they all function properly. Okay, we need to make sure that the item is ours, it's marked, it's logged, we've got some kind of way of recording all of the bits of gear that we own, that we use, when they were last inspected, and their lifespan. Okay, and remember that training videos like this, they're only a small part of, you know, getting to know this kind of stuff. I'd highly recommend going away and doing a competent person inspection course for the outdoor industry. Covers much more detail than I'm going to go into. Just going to show you some examples, and in fairness most of them are going to be fairly extreme examples of where it's the kind of not sure judgments that are harder to show videos like this, so it's definitely worth going and getting that proper training there. Okay, so let's get started. Okay, so none of the connectors you can see here have any damage. They all operate okay, but we're not going to use these for a different reason. So in one way or another, all of these connectors have become obsolete. They're no longer appropriate to use, either because they're out of date, they're uncertified, or they're just constructed in a way that adds risk to any system. So we'll just have a quick look at these in turn. Firstly, we've got a steel oval carabiner here. This is made by Stubai. Apart from the branding on it, it has no other markings. So there's no CE certification, there's no UIAA stamp. So this is pre-CE marking, so that puts it pretty old to begin with. Also, the way these are constructed is very, very simple, but they have an extremely sharp corner on the gate there. I could definitely cut my finger on that. So that's going to snag on your textile items, on your rope, on your slings, and that's going to cause some damage over time. So although on the face of it this connector looks, you know, perfectly well maintained, it's definitely not appropriate to use anymore. So something like this would definitely be going in the scrap. And we have another example here. So this one's made by Black Diamond USA. Again, it doesn't have any certifications. There's no CE mark, no UIAA, no American equivalent on there. It does have minimum braking strains on, which is what the Stubai Oval didn't have. But this also predates CE certification. This hasn't been produced with that, either because it was produced before CE marking, or it just wasn't produced for sale in the European area, hence it doesn't have the marking. So although the carabiner functions perfectly well, there's no kind of age on here and there's no conformity, so again we can't be using this. Over this one here, well, we've got our strength rating, we've got our manufacturer's mark, and we actually do have a CE mark on this one with its notified body. So on the face of it you think, okay, this one would be absolutely fine to use. It operates, yeah, no obvious damage or corrosion, a little bit scuffed but otherwise okay. But if we go back to the brand, so HB, well, they're no longer in business, and when they were producing their carabiners and connectors, they were putting a 10-year lifespan on these, and HB have been out of business for over 10 years now, so the lifespan of this connector has expired. So even if we see it to be, you know, perfectly functional, we can't use this professionally. It's beyond its intended lifespan. So again, something like this is destined for the scrap. So here for comparison, we've got a modern connector. This one's made by Petzl. We have a CE marking here. The 4-digit number afterwards is the notified body, the company that's done the independent testing on this product. We also have a UIAA stamp, and hiding around here we have an EN standard. So this is certified for sale in the European marketplace. It's produced to a standard. The lifespan on this we can check. It's got a unique serial number, so we can identify the date this product was made and work out when it's due for retirement. So this is the kind of thing that we should be using, with all its markings and traceability on it. This is a modern connector. Everything on our racks when we go out and work with clients really should be of this standard. Here we've got some quite obviously corroded connectors. I mean, I don't think you'd ever be in any doubt if you were faced with looking at some of these in a kit store. So we'll just have a quick closer look. So this is an aluminium alloy connector. So as these corrode away, the metal kind of flakes off, and you could kind of get a fingernail in there and really start to peel off layers of that alloy there. And that's this one's been left in a wet environment underground for quite some time. Just about still operates, but yeah, it's definitely knackered, that one. Kind of a high rope style steel oval with a locking spur, this one. So some parts of this are just showing a bit of surface tarnish, almost a patina, but there are other bits here where you can kind of really feel it with your fingernail. So the general rule of thumb with corrosion and rust is if you could just kind of clean it off with a bit of a scrub. It's just surface tarnish, it's probably okay, but if it's pitted, when you clean it you can still see or feel, you know, the impact of it. It's taken metal actually out of the device as it's corroded away. Then that's definitely game over for it. So any pitted rust, anything that you can't just quite easily scrub off with a Brillo pad or a toothbrush or something, if it leaves, you know, you can hear that. If it leaves that kind of pitted rough surface, then that's it. The corrosion's actually into the metal, not just on the surface. Slightly more subtle one here. So something I've noticed particularly with kind of modern carabiners where they have stainless steel pins on them, but aluminium alloy bodies, is you can get a bit of galvatic corrosion around these. So what we've actually got going on this one, it's probably been stored in a damp environment, and we have a bit of flaking going on around that pin there, and you can actually get your fingernail under it and start to lift the little layers. You know, the rot is setting in under the anodization of this carabiner, because don't forget, the anodization is not just there to make the thing look cool, you know, set it apart from others. It's a protective layer to it. So once you've got corrosion going through there, suddenly the real metal of the carabiner starts to get oxidizing quite badly. So it's only a tiny little portion on this one, but it's right around the pin that holds the gate, which is the locking mechanism of the device. So yeah, that's definitely game over for that one, but slightly harder to spot. These connectors all show differing levels of wear, but all of which I'd class as too much wear, unsafe. Too much metal has been removed from these. If you want a specific figure in terms of percentage of metal we can wear away off these devices, well, I'm not going to give that to you. The only people who can tell you definitively how much wear is acceptable are the manufacturers of those devices. Okay. So this one here is absolutely classic kind of cow's tail lanyard carabiner, the inside radius running along dirty ropes or even occasionally cables. That's wearing away quite nicely. There's no like big groove there, but you can just see an overall fairly significant loss of metal within that area there, and you can see it's kind of pinching down a bit in its diameter. Yeah, so we've retired that one. The wear's a little bit more obvious on this one. It's your classic kind of Italian hitch carabiner grooves here. It's quite a deep one on this side, a couple more shallow ones on there and there, which aren't too bad on their own, but kind of taken with that deep groove here, it's definitely enough to retire that connector. Definitely a more extreme example here on this one. You can just see this, loads has been carved out of this one here. So this is your classic kind of top rope anchor point or your belay carabiner there just sat on a belay device, constantly having rope run through it. You know, your dirty ropes, you could do this very, very quickly to a connector. But yeah, no doubt about it, that one's, it's a fairly extreme example. That's definitely had it, that one. So a key part of our routine inspections are function checks. So if a device has a job, has a purpose, you should check that it still does that. So all of these connectors have failed on function grounds. Some of them have some wear as well, but let's have a look at them individually. First off here, we have a large HMS style carabiner, quite heavily worn on its inside, typical of cow cells, lanyard carabiners, these ones. But that's not the reason that this one has been retired. Now if we look closer at the gate, well, that doesn't look quite right, does it? We've got our gate function is impaired. It's not returning to where it should be. Even if we push that, we can see that the barrel doesn't locate. So something's gone wrong with this. This one has become bent or damaged or misaligned somewhere. So that's quite an obvious one if you're checking something, but if we were to kind of force that closed and just like visually glance across a pile of these, that's something we could miss. So we definitely need to check the operation of these devices. Okay, again, another reason to check the function on your items. On the face of it, this one looks perfectly acceptable. It's got a little bit of wear there from being run with Italian hitches, I imagine. But once we unscrew to check the gate operation, yeah, we've got a spring failure there. So that is not something that we can maintain or fix. That has had it, that one. Got a Maillons Rapide here. Now this one is actually pretty new. It's quite upsetting to retire this, I think on pretty much its first or second use, if I remember. So we'll check the function on this by screwing the gate up, and oh, there we go, almost straight away the screws bound on the threads, and I can't do that with my fingers. I'd need to get a spanner on that. So if we're having to force these connectors to screw shut, you know, if we're having to put any effort into making these things operate properly, then you know that's game over for this device here. So another one here. So this is you know, fairly decent looking HMS, compact HMS style carabiner here. No particular wear. Everything seems to operate okay. Yeah, just catches, just doesn't quite shut properly on the nose of the gate there. Well, we can actually get that to sit in a way it doesn't shut. And there's a bit of visual evidence for this, you can see as well. If you have a look, you can see the inside edge of that keylock nose there has developed a bit of a wear point. Okay, it's taken off the anodization, and you can definitely see it's starting to kind of wear that away. So over time this has possibly received a bit of a load from the side, it's bent the gate pin slightly, so now it no longer lines up, and the evidence of that is clear in that it won't shut properly every time, although we can make it shut, but the fact it's scarring on the nose there just shows us that this is one that's had this issue for a little while, you know, and that shouldn't be doing that, shouldn't be scarring on there. So okay, so there you go. So remember then, that's not an exhaustive list of damage, wear, or any reasons to kind of retire these bits of gear. It's just a bit of an overview. It's definitely worth, I know I keep saying this, go and do a competent person training course. The extreme examples of damage and wear, like you might have seen in some of there, that's pretty obvious. It's the kind of 50-50 judgment calls that you just can't get from a video like this. So yeah, proper training course is highly advised. So remember, we need to record our items when we purchase them, keep a history, keep a track of the lifespan of them if they have one. When we come to doing our checks, record that. We're going to look, we're going to feel around the device, and then we're going to check all the methods of operation to make sure it's doing its job properly. Anything that we retire, anything that we don't think is safe to use, we need to put beyond service, so we destroy those. So with a carabiner or a Maillon, pop it in a bench vise and get a hacksaw or an angle grinder and destroy it. Make sure it can't be accidentally returned into active use. Okay, Cool, yeah, so check out the other videos I'm going to do on different types of equipment inspection as well. And say, if you've not watched the main video I did with the general principles of checking your gear, go back and watch that now. Alright, thanks for watching, see you again.